It was the year 20XX, and Earth had finally achieved an extended period of peace. Dr. Wily seemingly vanished, permitting the world to focus once more on true progress. However, Megaman, fearing this peace would not last, recruited 8 willing robot masters and began training them to combat any force of evil, should it dare arise. To aid Mega Man's coaching, Dr. Light created a new robot, Justice Man. Justice Man would possess abilities and weaponry similar to Mega Man's. And he would also share Mega Man's strong sense of justice. One fateful day, a group of robots began rallying against their creators. You must forgive any initial show of force. I had wished for a peaceful evacuation of human personnel. But some of my comrades were simply too zealous. None were injured, and it will remain that way if you remain off of our premises. Our purpose will be made clear to you soon enough. News of the rebellion spread rapidly throughout the world, causing panic. However, Mega Man saw this as an opportunity to test his team, the Rock Force. He sent the Rock Force out to subdue the rebellious robots. But none of the team returned. With communications down, Mega Man knew he had to act. I'll get to the bottom of this. I'll save my friends and bring those rebels to justice. So, fun fact, I've been wanting to do Mega Man fan games on this channel since around the time Street Fighter Cross Mega Man came out. I just never got to it. Hello everyone, and welcome to Let's Play Mega Man Rock Force, a fan game by Goldwater DLS. I'll go over any changes I made in the options once we get into the main game itself, so for right now, let's just start the game off. 6 months before the rebellion. Mega Man, I have troubling news. There's been an energy surge at a nearby electric plant. Now the robots there have started malfunctioning. You and Justice Man must go and stop the robots. I hope nobody's already been injured. Mega Man, I'll search the other entrance for human workers. Good luck, brother. An intro stage in a classic-styled Mega Man game that's not in 7 or 8? Well, this is a bit odd. In fact, not many fan games from the top of my head actually do this, which kind of weird because intro stages are really good, but either way. Starting off, Mega Man controls as he basically did in Mega Man 4. There's some minor quirks that are different. For instance, there's now a dedicated slide button. But for the most part, if you've played Mega Man past 4, you're gonna know what you're getting into here. This engine's very good though, and it has one thing I wish the main games did sooner. The charge sound effect fades after a while, and that's really good because that means I can hold my charge and not constantly have a wah 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 sound effect just grinding into my ears. In terms of any other differences Mega Man has off the start, he actually starts with a few friends by his side. He starts with Rush Coil as usual. Eddie is now a selectable buddy, and he'll just pop on down and give you a random item as he does during the mainline games, really. And even Tango from Mega Man Game Boy 5 is present. And he just kind of circles along the ground and any walls, doing damage to anything in his pathway. Some mechanics you're going to want to learn here are these little things on the walls that reflect your bullets. In fact, your Mega Buster shots will now bounce off basically any armor, like the Metal helmets, and they can activate things when that happens. I think this is supposed to be a tutorial for you to use this particular Tango weapon here, unless you want to use Rush Gold to get up there. This is honestly a very good stage for that alone, honestly, because it teaches you have these things. And the best intro stages in most games tend to teach you well how to do things. Mega Man X teaches you how to do the wall jump and all that. X5 teaches you the ducks, stuff like that. Overall, it's a very short and easy stage, though, because we're already at the end of it. All the workers seem to have evacuated safely. Also, all hostile robots have been neutralized. You sure about that? Boss for the intro stage is Shockman. This guy's gonna stick to the top two platforms there, doing a couple of normal attacks. He's gonna jump from platform to platform, occasionally shooting little balls down at you. But the main thing he's going to do is occasionally shoot his arms over the gap and start raining down thunderbolts at you. You have to keep in mind the little bouncing, reflective platforms in this fight, because that's the only way you're going to actually be able to hit him unless you want to use Rush Gold to get up there for some reason. Overall, it's a very easy fight, but if you're not careful, he can do the damage to you pretty quickly. Thankfully, even the Mega Buster is pretty good at taking out bosses in this game on its own. You alright, Justice Man?
I'm completely baffled, Megaman. Functionally, he's completely operational. However, the shock altered his mental matrix rather strangely. Tests reveal no change in his behavior, but still, I can't be certain. Try to keep an eye on him and report anything unusual. I will.
Present day. And they really just kind of throw you into the stage selector with no transition beyond that present day thing. Here are our 8 Robot Masters for this particular game. And one thing I want you to keep an eye on Charademan's profile picture. It'll actually change to like one of 3 or 4 different ones. I don't know why I really like that boss select theme. We're going to start off with Cryptman here, just because he's the one who was featured in the cutscene at the start of the game, and that's basically the only reason I have for it. Now, for my own personal history of this game, I got introduced to this through another Let's Player, who I believe I've mentioned once or twice on the channel before as someone I watched in the background, Rome Mithril. I watched him play this game years ago at this point, and I've been meaning to get to it myself eventually, but I just never did, and I figured, you know what? It's probably a good one to get into for doing Mega Man fan games on the channel, because I do want to do a couple of these. Super Fighting Robot, the more recently released Rock and Roll, and a couple others as well. And maybe I'll eventually beat Unlimited, because I've actually never beaten that game to this day. Now, starting off, Cryptman's stage's gimmick, beyond the hands at the start, is going to be mostly just the trap enemies that we love oh so much in Mega Man games. But we also have to keep in mind things from above, because they're going to constantly be throwing skull bombs at you. The stages in this game are pretty good in one regard, in that they're constantly throwing new challenges at you and implementing them well into the level design. For instance, they give you this nice little berth here to realize that there's going to be a bird that's going to try and drop skull bombs on you, and that's no good. The one thing I will say, though, about this game, and I'm going to be bringing this up constantly throughout the LP, and I'm not sure if this is just my copy of the game doing this, but the controls can be a bit sticky sometimes. In particular, there's going to be times later on where Mega Man just starts walking left when I'm giving no input, and it eventually just stops and I don't know what causes it. Similarly, there's going to be times where you're going to see me constantly sliding when all I'm doing is just pressing the jump button. I'm not holding down at all. That could just be a weird control issue on my computer, because to control this, the game doesn't have dedicated joypad, game controller stuff. You're supposed to mostly just use your keyboard, but I like controller, so I have input mapper going. So input mapper could be causing some stuff there, but at the same time, in me trying to figure out what's causing it, I had noticed it also happens on the keyboard, so it could be a custom control set thing. Now, throughout this game, we're going to be finding bolts, and bolts, again, are used in the shop as they are in the main games. But unlike the main games, I think they're not as necessary this time around, because if you die a lot, E-tanks are very plentiful in the stages themselves. The only thing that bolts are useful for completely is in the shop, the spike immunity items are there, and as is one particular upgrade we'll be talking when we get to it. It's also, with me mentioning spikes, I should bring up that in the options of the game, I did customize it slightly. I believe I changed the slide strength to strong, which changes it to something along the lines of Mega Man 6's slide physics. And I also changed the spike difficulty. When you boot up the game for the first time, spikes will either take half or a fourth of your HP. I forget exactly which it is. And knockback, my old friend. But I changed it to the Mega Man 2 spike difficulty, which is what I'm just the most used to. Essentially, if I don't have invincibility frames and I touch spikes, I'll die. There's also a Mega Man 1 setting that changes it so that if you touch spikes, period, you die. And I'm glad that option's there, but, no thanks. Either way, time for Cryptman himself. And the reason I took him on as a first Robot Master is because he's the one I took on in my first playthrough. Also, if you're below a certain amount of HP on the first fight with him, he'll throw a life tank at you to restore your HP, because he's honorable like that. Cryptman's pattern is that he'll be constantly teleporting in the darkness behind him. Whenever he teleports in, or he puts his cape over his shoulder like that, he's going to dash across the screen. He can also just jump up like that and cause little shockwaves. He has two versions of that, where he'll just teleport in and do it, and then another roll he'll do two across the stage. That is all the attacks he has. If you can keep track of your charge shots around him, you should do pretty well. As well, he's a very easy Robot Master to not get hit on. Oh, you've got to be kidding me. Well, now I have hubris, and I want to take him on without getting hit. I say hubris, but there actually is a secondary reason why you want to beat Robot Masters in this game without taking a hit. I'll talk about that more in a moment. You might notice, though, unlike most Mega Man games, there's now an opened boss door on the right. This goes into the Rock Force part of the game style, because after we gain the ability of the boss, we can head right, and we free a member of the Rock Force. In this case, Nightman. This is pretty key for a reason I'll get into in a moment. First off, let's talk about Cryptman's weapon, the Crypt Cloak. When you don it, you turn into this black and white outline that is completely invisible to enemies. You're not invincible, just invisible. When you jump and land, you can cause a shockwave. Additionally, you can also stand on similarly white platforms that you can't stand on otherwise. Additionally, we also got the perfect B parts. Taking a bit of a different route compared to some of the other games in the series, if you beat 4 Robot Masters without taking a hit during the fight with or without using your weakness, you can buster them or use your weakness for this, you'll get one of the 4 beat letters, and for getting all 4, you're gonna get beat. I'm going to be doing that throughout this LP, though not every boss is going to be easily done with no hits. I'll just tell you that outright. You might do 4 different ones than me. It doesn't matter as long as you do 4 throughout the game. And finally, we also got our first team members that showed up on the team menu there. Taking a bit of a note out of Mega Man Powered Up, upon beating a boss fight, you're going to get a teammate you can play as from then on. For instance, I can now play as Nightman. And each of the Robot Masters has their own different abilities. They have most of the same mobility, like sliding and such, but Nightman, for instance, just pressing the fire button throws his mace forward, but you can also hold up before you press fire to do the little loop his special weapon can do in Mega Man 6. Additionally, his shield does a bit of a Proto Man thing where it can block projectiles from the front. Watch out for that vaudeville hook, by the way. I think that's what that's called, because that can drag you right into the spikes if you're not careful, and that's no good. Also, hide a lot of dead mini-bosses from the 4 through 6 games in the background. I think I see a bit of a Mega Man 2 one there as well. Now, one thing I'm going to be doing as well, by the way, that's the platform I mentioned that Crypt Cloak can allow you to stand on. On the website for this game, each of the Robot Masters has a little bit of a bio, not quite a Mega Man and base CD bio, but something all the same. For instance, Cryptman was created to repel grave robbers from the ancient tomb of a wealthy family. Visitors have noted that he seems to dislike the depressing atmosphere of his workplace and longs for more uplifting purpose in life. His eloquence and nobility are well known, which is why he serves as a main spokesman for the rebels. Despite this, he prefers to work in the shadows and hates when light sabotages his stealthiness, which shouts out his weakness. Since his recent refusal to work, the ancient gym has become infested with many dangerous thieving robots, though many booby traps are still active. And Charademan is an acting robot that can perfectly imitate the movements and mannerisms of those he studies, as we're actually going to see in this room where he does a bit of a mini-boss thing by mimicking both Shadow Man and Quick Man. No attacks from him, he only tries to touch damage you, but he mimics their patterns pretty faithfully. He is used to fill in for human actors that have fallen ill or on temporary leave, or are on temporary leave, rather. He regrets that his creators only made him capable of mimicking other performers rather than permitting him to add his own flair to the characters. He can only mimic the performances of people or robot he has studied thoroughly through visual cues. And this stage has one of my least favorite rooms that I've never died on. The way this room works is that I think what's going on is that the background is rotated 180 degrees from what it actually is. So, for instance, I think we just stood on this next platform or something or other like that. Honestly, it's kind of hard to tell what's going on. All I know is it scares me every time I'm in here. But yeah, Charademan can have several different profile pictures. One with the fedora, one that's just himself, one where he's a woman, and otherwise. I just find little details like that really cool, honestly, because that means they put a little bit of extra effort to make the game a bit more charming, and you know, that's cool by me. Now, as for a little disclaimer for this series, not only am I getting the beat parts, but I'm also showing off every stage. Those who have played the game know what I'm probably talking about in that regard, but it's worth mentioning all the same to those who do know what I'm talking about. We'll see what I mean when things happen in several parts. Notable, I am saving on bolts just for the most expensive item in the shop because it's the most useful thing in the shop. And also notable, if you check the save file, you can see this. Megaman does start with the energy balancer on his person. So in the case you grab weapon energy while weapon's already full, or you're on the Mega Buster, you will get the weapon energy put right into the weapon that's lowest. That includes the Rush, Eddy, and Tango meters, by the way. The game also has the quick select from the 16-bit games, where if you press L and R, you can quick select your weapons. But a refinement that I want to say was added in Mega Man 10 was if you hold both buttons, you'll just swap right back to the Mega Buster. Time for Charademan, though. He's weak to the Crypt Cloak, which is why I came in this direction. He likes to throw balloons at you from either the very far left or the very far right of the screen. Blue balloons will just bounce around the room a few times before splitting off into a X shape of pellets, and question mark balloons that are red can be destroyed. However, when they're destroyed of your own volition or otherwise, another Charademan will come out of it and just start jumping around all over the place. Not the most complex pattern, but keeping track of how many times the balloons bounce kind of screws in my head, so we're just gonna take him out with his weakness and accept that we got hit. For beating him, we get the Charade Clone, which is one of my favorite abilities in the game. Essentially, it allows you to... Mega Man himself kind of stops moving and meditates, and a clone of him shows up. You then move the clone around projectiles and such, in which case you can either run into things with it for heavy damage with an explosion, or press the fire button again to warp over to the current one free of getting around the hazards. Just for getting around annoying platforming, this is a really good ability. We also get Tornado Man, but I'll talk about him next part. But with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 2, we're going to be heading after some more Robot Masters. See you guys then.